Welcome to Bloomberg Green. Please take your seats. The show is about to begin. Welcome to Bloomberg Green. Please take your seats. The show is about to begin. Welcome to Bloomberg Green. Please take your seats. The show is about to begin.
The program will begin in 10 minutes. The program will begin in 10 minutes. The program will begin in 10 minutes. Please take your seats. The program will begin in 5 minutes. The program will begin in 10 minutes. Please take your seat. Please take your seats. The program will begin in 5 minutes. Please take your seats. The program will begin in 5 minutes. Please take your seats. The program is about to begin. Please take your seats. The program is about to begin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bloomberg Green Seattle. Across the world, the damage inflicted by climate change is only growing more severe, even as Washington, D.C. makes taking action more difficult. The good news is, for most of the past 2 decades, U.S. climate leadership hasn't come from the White House or Congress. It has come from cities like Seattle, from states like Washington, and from partnerships among the grassroots, business, and philanthropy, too. That spirit of collaboration and optimism is what inspired us to launch Bloomberg Green. At Bloomberg, we provide data and analysis that helps our customers recognize not just climate risks, but climate opportunities. And at Bloomberg Philanthropies, we're working to bring even more partners on board to help make the world safer, stronger, and greener, no matter which way the political winds blow. So thanks for all your good work, your partnership, and for joining us this week. Enjoy the summit, and all the best.
Please welcome to the stage Bloomberg's Meg Szabo and Sarah Wells.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bloomberg Green Seattle, presented by Amazon. We're thrilled to be back in one of the world's most climate-conscious cities for a second year of powerful conversations and meaningful connections.
And it's fair to say, as Mike just mentioned in his remarks, we are meeting at a difficult time. But controversy around climate action isn't new. And despite the policy and business shifts that we've seen here in the US this year, the fact remains that the impacts of climate change are only getting greater.
Tonight's program will highlight the ways that climate touches every one of our lives, from the food that we eat, to the shows that we watch, and the communities that we live in.
And we will hear how innovators, activists, and advocates are coming together to make our planet healthier and also more resilient. But before we get into all of that, I've got a few logistical announcements. If anyone needs the Wi-Fi, it is on your badge, and I believe behind me right now. And more importantly, we really want to hear from you, both tonight and tomorrow if you're attending. So please engage with us on social media. Our hashtag is BloombergGreen.
You can also submit questions for our speakers and vote in our polls by scanning the QR code that's behind me. You can also view our agenda there as well. We'll have a few polls tonight, so get your phones ready to participate in those. I would also like to thank our Bloomberg Green Seattle sponsors, our title sponsor, Amazon, our official airline, Alaska and Hawaiian Airlines. With that, let's get started. Please join me in welcoming Sally Fouts, Global Leader of the Climate Pledge.
Good evening. My name is Sally Fouts, and I am the Director of the Climate Pledge at Amazon. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here with all of you in Seattle and at the second annual Bloomberg Green. A little more than 5 years ago, I got my dream job. I'd been with Amazon for more than 10 years, working on retail, Prime Video, Amazon Music, and I learned from and enjoyed every one of those experiences. But I knew that I was passionate about sustainability. So when I was offered the chance to lead the Climate Pledge and drive meaningful action on the most pressing issue of our time, I jumped at it. More than half a decade later, I couldn't be prouder of the progress that we've made. Amazon is the world's largest corporate purchaser of renewable energy for the 5th year in a row. There are more than 31,000 electric vehicles delivering packages around the world. And the Climate Pledge has now been signed by more than 550 companies across 60 industries and 46 countries. At its core, this pledge is about partnership. It's about bringing businesses together to find solutions to shared problems. Solutions like Joule, in which a coalition of Climate Pledge signatories are joining forces to build a comprehensive EV charging network in Bengaluru, the 3rd fastest growing city in the world. Solutions like Lane Shift, where an organization composed of 100 mayors from around the world have partnered with us to reduce freight emissions in rapidly growing urban centers like Mumbai and Mexico City. This is the power of collective action, working together to create the kind of change that none of us can do alone. We've also learned another fundamental truth. Sustainability isn't just good for the world, it's also good for business. That sometimes gets an eye roll, and I get it. For a long time, there was a trade-off. Early on, many renewable energy and sustainable production practices were niche or prohibitively expensive. That is no longer the case. Today, consumers actively seek sustainable brands, and cutting-edge technologies are enabling businesses to be both sustainable and profitable. In fact, we've actually reached the point where companies that don't embrace sustainability can lose business. There are numbers that back it up. Last month, the Harvard Business Review released a study that analyzed more than 10 months of Amazon data. It found that adding a sustainability label to a product boosted customer demand by 13%. And it didn't matter what the product was. If consumers saw that it was sustainable, they were more likely to buy it. At Amazon, we've also seen the benefits of sustainability in our own business. By the end of last year, we've removed 100% of plastic air pillows from our delivery packaging globally, and we replaced them with paper filler. That's resulted in carbon and cost savings for the company. It's good for the planet, it's good for the wallet, it's good for the company, and it's good for customers. The Climate Pledge is also bringing together partners from nearly every industry. Take Alaska Airlines, for example. They're investing in sustainable aviation fuel and electric aircraft to help make travel greener. Weyerhaeuser, another Climate Pledge signatory, is implementing sustainable forestry practices. And DL 1961, which is a denim manufacturer, is revolutionizing the clothes that we wear. Did you know that the average pair of jeans takes 1,500 gallons of water? Well, a pair from DL 1961 takes just 10. That's real, tangible change. And it's a reminder that no matter what your industry is, there are cost-effective ways to make your business more sustainable. I know none of this work is easy, but we've conquered big challenges before. 60 years ago, right here in Seattle, millions gathered for the 1962 World Fair. It was the dawn of a different era, the space race, when humanity shot to the moon and reached for the stars. Today, we're charting new frontiers. This time, the race is not to explore the outer limits of space, but to protect the ground beneath our feet. It's fitting that one of the buildings constructed for the World's Fair is now the Climate Pledge Arena, which is home to the Seattle Storm and the Seattle Kraken. And it's also the most sustainable arena in the world, with 100% powered by 100% renewable energy and with 75% of food locally sourced. Even the ice comes from Pacific Northwest rainwater. It's collected on the roof and used to create the greenest ice in the NHL. It's a perfect example of local resources put to good use. So the challenges have changed, but the ultimate mission remains: to move humanity forward through innovation, exploration, and collaboration. These conversations have never been more important. Each year, the urgency grows, and that means that sustainability, in the words of our beloved Taylor Swift, will never go out of style. So let us know how we can help. Come to us with ideas, and if you haven't already, sign our Climate Pledge. Remember that this isn't a zero-sum game. Only together can we tackle the most difficult challenge of our time. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Paul Greenberg, best-selling author of 4 Fish.
Thank you very much. Great to be here. So I speak a lot, and a lot of times I try to talk about different topics, but the only thing that ever interests anyone is, what should I eat? Again and again and again, people ask, what should I eat? And, everyone from Barack Obama's chef to Dr. Oz has asked me this question. You might ask why they would ask me. Believe it or not, I'm actually a little bit famous. I'm not Jane Fonda famous, but I am what people call fish famous. I have just done tons and tons of reporting about fish around the world. I've written this book, For Fish, which was a James Beard Award winner and a bestseller, blah, 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 and reported for all these different places, and et cetera, et cetera. I've been all over the world. I've been to every corner of the world, but what should I eat? Again and again, people ask me, what should I eat? As I said, I wrote For Fish. I tried to get away from fish, and I wrote about climate. I tried to write about quitting my iPhone. I even wrote most recently about bringing George Washington back from the past to run against Trump in 2028. What should I eat? So it's my particular cross to bear. So I'm just going to go ahead and tell you about what you should eat. Well, first of all, we should look at sort of where we fit in as Americans in this whole space. So we're second in overall carbon emissions as a country. But when you start drilling down and you look at individually what we're like, we're not so great. In fact, we're terrible. We're about 15 tons of carbon per person per year in the United States, which means congratulations, we're number one. We are collectively the most climate impactful people on the planet. So, yeah. But what should I eat? Okay. Well, what do we eat? Well, so a lot of people, if I were to ask you, who here eats the Mediterranean diet, right? Probably a lot of people would say that's what they're doing. well, no. Actually, we eat the SAD diet, the standard American diet. Just a little bit of Mediterranean, but mostly we're eating a lot of meat and a lot of processed food. And our number one thing that we really like is beef. 27 to 100 kilos of CO2 emissions per kilo of fish, kilo of meat on the plate. So we think, well, let's do better. Let's become a vegetarian. Sorry to say, cheese is actually pretty darn bad, 6 to 13 kilograms of CO2 per kilo on the plate. Chicken is actually better, believe it or not, than cheese. So you could always have the chicken if you want to have the chicken. But here's something interesting. Look at fish. And look in particular at this fish. This is the Alaska or walleye pollock, 1 to 3.8 kilos. That's much better than a lot of land food. You may not know the walleye pollock, but actually you do. It's in your filet of fish sandwich. It's also in your California roll as fake crab. And anybody here a Larry David fan? You might recall that Cheryl and Larry David break up because during sex, Larry can't stop talking about the difference between fake crab and real crab. So the Alaska pollock, that is the fake crab. But it's real pollock. Anyway, so that is a very good carbon deal. But let's look more deeply. So what about seafood in general? Should you just eat all seafood? Well, of course, once again, America number one. Our number one seafood choice, 5 out of the 15 pounds we eat every single year, is the worst absolute seafood choice there is, shrimp. Shrimp, you might not recognize it in this form. I'd like to help my audiences along. So shrimp is just bad on a lot of fronts. When you catch shrimp, you kill about anywhere from 5 to 15 pounds of other stuff for every pound of shrimp that comes in. But when we farm it, it's particularly bad. So this is a mangrove forest, a photo I took in Vietnam. This is the natural habitat for the sort of incoming water that is a kind of nursery ground for shrimp. This is the way a mangrove forest should look. This is the way it looks after shrimp farms have moved in. We've lost millions and millions of acres of mangrove forests, and this is really particularly bad because mangrove forests turned out to be better carbon sequesters than even tropical rainforests. So we're losing it because we would like another shrimp cocktail. Not a good choice. Our number 2 seafood choice is also really problematic. Salmon, and in particular farmed salmon. So farmed salmon is by and large what Americans are eating. I know I'm sort of in the heartland of salmon country over here in Seattle, but it's really farmed salmon that people are eating. And a quarter of all the wild fish caught in the world is boiled down and ground up into feed that is mostly fed to salmon. And I should note that a lot of these fish, like these anchovies in this picture, are perfectly and totally edible. And congratulations once again, American number 1. We are the largest consumers of farmed salmon in the world. Even our wild salmon's a little wrong. I mean, don't get me wrong. I eat a lot of wild salmon. I love wild salmon. You should eat the wild salmon. But that's not really what's happening. A lot of wild salmon, and we are the second biggest catcher of wild salmon in the world. We catch in America. We send to China. We frozen. They defrost it there, bone it, fillet it, and refreeze it, and send it back to us. There it is, double frozen. I remember I was on Terry Gross, and I told her about this, and she said, my mother always said not to double freeze food. And I was like, Terry, you're absolutely right. But unfortunately, that's kind of what we do here in America. We double freeze things. So what should I eat? All right, so let's remember, before we just, I made some fun of the first 2 most consumed seafoods in America. Let's not take that as a condemnation of seafood, because remember, it's really land food. I'm going to call it land food because, if you're going to take the tens of thousands of species that we eat from the sea and call it all seafood, I'm just going to call all the land food land food. Land food is super carbon impactful, mostly because we're growing corn and we're growing soy, not to feed us, but to feed all these animals. So we do this again and again and again all over the country. And we, probably many of you flew over this when you were on your way to Seattle, but this flyover country, where tons and tons of corn and soy is grown to feed all the beef and pigs and chickens that we eat, that causes all this fertilizer to be used and put into our waterways. By the way, I took this picture in Minnesota when I was doing a story about the Mississippi River, and I asked, what is this terribly blighted town that has these giant fertilizer depots and a haze of nitrogen over it was Walnut Grove. Remember a little house in the prairie? That's what's happening. So all that fertilizer goes down into the Gulf of Mexico, causes a dead zone the size of the state of Connecticut some years, during which there's hardly any oxygen and no fish to be caught because there's no oxygen there. Literally land food killing seafood. But there are solutions out there. This guy, the mussels, clams, oysters, they all are tremendously good at filtering water and taking nitrogen out of the water. An oyster can filter something like 40 gallons of water in a single day. And if you look at it, back to our cast of characters, our carbon cast of characters, look at that. 0.6 kilos of carbon per kilo of food on your plate. Just really amazing. Okay, lentils, still great. I don't want you to turn, and if there are vegetarians in the room, I don't want to turn you away from them. But still, the mussel does really well. And if we join the mussel with a nice little eye and his friend, the kelp, another great, super great carbon benefit, filters better, even better than mussels and clams and oysters, really terrific. So those are the things we want to embrace. We would like, I think, over the next few years, and people in this room should think about it, we want to go from the SAD diet. We want to go, the Mediterranean diet, good idea. Lots of whole grains, lots of fruits and vegetables, just a little bit of animal protein. But here's my radical idea, and any cookbook author wants to take this up, please go for it. The pescatarian diet. What if we were to have a diet that's mostly plants, but had really sustainable seafood, low carbon impact? We're eating things like anchovies that we normally feed to salmon, mussels and seaweed that filter the water, even Alaska pollock that have super low carbon footprints, and of course Alaska salmon, wild Alaska salmon. So that would be a great thing to do. Unfortunately, in this country, we are pretty bad about allocating money where it should be. We spend $4.7 billion just on corn to feed things like cows. $1.1 billion on all fish altogether. I mean, it's quite a bargain we're getting out of the full fish situation. Well, it's a bargain that the present administration doesn't see. Currently being proposed is a budget cut of 28% to that paltry $1 billion down to $790 million, shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. So if this is what we should eat, if this is what we're striving for, we have just one choice. And I mean this in the most bipartisan sense. We need to lock some up. Thank you very much.
Please welcome to the stage Renee Erickson, chef, restaurateur, artist, and author, and Annie McBride, Vice President of Impact at the James Beard Foundation, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Kate Crater.
You guys have bad view.
And this is great. You guys look great. Thank you for being here, and I'm so excited to talk to Renee and Anne right now. Let's start, for anyone who doesn't quite know you, let's say a quick little bit about what each of your little empires looks like. Renee, let's start with you.
My name's Renee Erickson. I'm a chef here in Seattle. I have quite a number of restaurants, and we mostly feature seafood, I would say, largely. Lots and lots of shellfish, which you just learned about being very important. Yeah, happy to be here.
Hi, all. I'm Anne McBride. I'm the VP of Impact at the James Beard Foundation. You might know us for the James Beard Awards, but we also do a lot of work that supports the industry, and I oversee our research, training, and advocacy efforts.
Well done. That was short. Great. So you know what? You just heard a lot about the challenges that are facing the food industry right now. Let's talk about the challenges that are facing you guys who are right front and center in the restaurant world. In spite of how hard people are working to try and fight, some people are working hard to fight climate change and all the environmental issues that we have. It's getting harder and harder. So Renee, I wonder what is keeping you up at night? Like, what are your biggest environmental issues?
I mean, as a person that has restaurants that serve a lot of seafood, that is kind of front and center as to what we think about a lot in regards to like what we can source, what's available to source, cost, all the things that I think any consumer has, I think is the same thing that kind of goes to restaurants. We try really hard. We source basically from Washington waters all the way through Alaska, essentially. We don't import anything seafood-wise. So I think just trying to maintain that quality and care for the people that we get to know and meet that are trying to maintain their businesses in the fisheries world, and making it so that like people keep coming to our restaurants because it keeps getting more and more expensive. So trying to balance that and kind of keeping up on all the changes that happen in regards to impact around fisheries and sourcing.
And is it just getting harder every day now, or does it?
It's getting smaller, so yes, I think, like I joke that, we live in the center of salmon, and we almost serve almost no salmon, like, in the scheme of what you would imagine. And I would say largely all salmon, mostly served outside of the incredibly disgusting farm salmon, is Alaska fish that is not obviously local. So it's as local as we can get for the most part. But we do source from two husband and wife teams that fish, and then beyond that, we don't buy any other fish other than that. So everything else comes out of Bristol Bay, frozen. So yeah, it's very different. I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and it's an entirely different way of thinking about a seafood restaurant.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Oh. And you look at the national restaurant scene in such an in-depth, fantastic way. And I know you've done these fantastic climate insights, like these reports that look at what's happening on a really granular level. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing right now and what you're worried about?
Sure. So we launched last year a Climate Solutions for Restaurant Survival campaign. We do advocacy roundtables around the country where we bring together chefs, lawmakers, journalists, members of local organizations to really get people to understand the economic impact that climate has on restaurants and how important chefs are as stakeholders in any climate action, really. And what Renee just described around salmon, that's something that's appearing all over the country. I mean, in Maine, the waters are warming, lobsters are moving up. That affects, obviously, the fishermen there, the local economy, the local culture. The hurricanes last fall in the southeast impacted something like 60 or 70% of the pecan crop in Georgia, right? Because it was just before harvest. So that means that you are in states where something that is innate to the place completely disappears. And that might be a good time to mention an example that I've mentioned very regularly. One of our chefs at the Los Angeles roundtable last fall was saying that she's Thai, she cooks Thai food, and cilantro roots are at the core of the flavor that you love in Thai curry. It's an essential ingredient to what makes a curry a curry. Well, with soils warming, cilantro bolts before it forms roots. So she's had to replace this core ingredient with something else. And chefs are incredibly creative. You use other things. That's not usually the issue. Substituting or doing other dishes usually works. But the bigger questions that come up, so she's using green onions, it works technically. It's still a very good curry, but her customers need to understand why it doesn't taste quite like what they're used to. And then for her, it poses really big questions around identity. Is she still a Thai chef? Is she still Thai? Is her restaurant still Thai when something so essential to the cuisine is no longer part of it? So there's these big and small questions that really are impacting restaurants every day right now around climate.
It's just crazy. It's insane to think that something like the authenticity of Thai cuisine is now that it's so fundamental that something like something like warming waters and warming soil and how that changes how food is going to be grown. It's that fact blew my mind. We actually also, we want to know what you guys are thinking about. Everybody here goes out to eat, I hope. And we want to know if you're seeing the impact of climate change on restaurants. So I think, yep, yay. There's, if you guys can take out your phones and scan this little QR code, we would love it. We would love to know what's the biggest climate-related change you've noticed in your local dining restaurants, in your local dining scene. One answer is ingredient shortages. One answer is higher prices. Another is operational disruption, if you're looking carefully and you can see that. And then the last answer is no noticeable change. Renee, how would you answer that? I'll repeat it again. Ingredient shortages, higher prices.
1, 2, and 3, I think.
Oh, yeah, it's right
Yeah.
there. Cool. Making it easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Like, I think it's a funny, like, combination of riding through the pandemic and wondering, like, where the cause of the problems have come from. Higher prices, for sure. I think sometimes people think that restaurants get really great deals on things. They don't, unfortunately. I mean, maybe if you're buying like things that you don't want to serve that are like stored away forever and shipped to you in containers. But, all of those things are a huge challenge to a restaurant. And I would say most restaurants in the world are small. They're not big, enormous places that are serving thousands and thousands of things. And so their margins are already really small, and then they're kind of navigating a system that I think is growing to only support large entities. And so you end up, you're just like going to the grocery store essentially to buy some stuff, and those prices then get transferred on, through the system of charging what you need to charge to make any sort of money at all, and it becomes really expensive. And I think we're all seeing that. Like that, I think, would be the biggest challenge for sure in Seattle, but I think across the country, like everything is just so much more expensive. So, yeah.
And what would you say? Would you say ingredient shortages, given that crazy cilantro?
I mean, I think, as I said, the chefs find solutions to that. So while they are, whether there's a drought, a flood, a fire that completely disrupt the supply chain because farmers are hugely impacted, some policies that are cutting funding for farmers are also impacting chefs because that's less guaranteed income for a farmer. So that means they may not be planting certain things on a given year. They may go out of business completely. So, but the higher prices is what we're seeing because the wages are increasing, or labor costs are increasing is probably a better way to phrase it. The credit card fees are an enormous problem. And then, yes, the cost of ingredient, the cost of goods in general. And frankly, that's about to get even worse with tariffs for restaurants that might depend on more imported ingredients also. So, and there is the misconception very often on the side of diners who think that because they're paying more for dinner, chefs are making so much more money, and it's really the opposite when the margins are smaller than they've ever been. And so creating that understanding is really a challenge also. And yeah, I mean, you know more than anyone.
That's a whole nother panel.
Yeah.
I think... around the availability of things, I think the positive side to having smaller businesses is that you have a connection to your farmers and fishers and can adapt in that way. Like if they're like recently, if you were here over the weekend, it was 80 degrees. And if you were to look straight over there, you would look at Hama Hama, which is a farm that we buy most of our seafood from, and they're shutting down waters constantly because it was like hitting 90 degrees. And they aren't, like Hama is one of the farmers that proactively does that. So they'll manage the water temperature, or they'll monitor the water temperature and shut it down, I think, at like 60 degrees. Normally, like the Salish Sea hovers around 56, 57. And so there's a point where all sorts of things that you don't want to eat end up proliferating in warm water. And so they're trying to proactively do that, but also, like, we're in the middle of summer. It's like the high season for restaurants. Everyone comes to Washington to, for sure, eat salmon, but also oysters. And we sell more oysters than we do any time of year right now. And we're scrambling to try to find something that, A, we're proud of serving, that's not, kind of milky and not so delicious, summer oyster, quote unquote, and that's safe. And so there's, the challenges of just a normal summer versus like summer after summer where we're hitting, we were 80 degrees in June in Seattle, which never happens. And so all of that, I think, is just shifting what we can serve, what's available. And I think the bigger challenge is just trying to communicate that to our guests so that they are willing to kind of experience something else that might not be what they're planning on having. And or ideally, you can all come in February and March when we have like so many amazing oysters that are perfect, and we just want to serve as many as we can then, because they really are at their prime. And so it's just trying to like encourage like a mind shift around ordering. And I think a lot of that comes from caring, obviously. You're all here, paying attention to like weird details that nobody really wants to be spending their time doing. But I think it's, as a consumer, I think it's, if we can make like a few changes all the time, we're going to make some impact on something, which I think is really important to do.
It is. So I feel like we've talked about some bummer things. We just heard a lot about double frozen salmon and how Little House on the Prairie has been destroyed. So let's talk about, let's find some good news. Let's see if there's like something good to say. Renee, there is actually a new salmon that you might be interested in, right?
Yeah, so I'd say about 6 years ago, we were contacted by a company in San Francisco called Wild Type, who just, I think last week or the week before, finally got FDA approval to sell a cell-grown coho salmon.
I'm just going to interrupt for 1 second. You might, I don't know if you guys all know Renee, but she is like the seafood hero in the chef world. So if someone like Renee is talking about a cell-based salmon, like, pay attention, because it means that serious chefs are taking this seriously. So.
Yeah, I think when I didn't tell anyone I was thinking or even like talking to these people for a while, and Bobby, who's here somewhere in the room, is our executive chef, and I finally told him, and he was just like, what? Like, why would we? And, and I think, and most people's perception of it is like this weird, and it is weird. It's like, it's literally brewed salmon that came from a single cell, and they brew it, and then they essentially like let it grow in a form that, which I did not know this, not a scientist, that cells grow like horizontally kind of forever, and they will not grow vertically. And so they built this thing called what they call a scaffolding, so that they can raise this into a form that looks like a piece of like a saku block that a sushi chef would use. And so over the course of the last 6-ish years, I think we've tried it many times and have gone down to see how they do it. And we just recently did a dinner there in March, I think. And it's, I think I have to like compartmentalize it in my brain, where it's just like, this isn't, it's not my last meal, it's not my birthday dinner, but it is something that I think if we could have another alternative that I could be like, I hate farmed fish, at least open water farmed fish, and here's why, but there's this that like essentially is honestly better tasting and isn't gross, and isn't full of plastics and chemicals, and does have omega-3s and all the things that you want from a protein. And if you go into a Walmart anywhere in America and you get a sushi bowl or a poke bowl, like, most people don't care or know where that fish comes from at all, and you probably don't want to know. So like, if we could replace a little bit of that, half of that, 3/4, all of it would be a dream. with something that I know is not causing the damage that we've seen here in the Northwest, that would be amazing. And so that was the reason why I was like very interested in this. So we've been working with them for many years now, and we're this month. Is it this month? We're going to launch it at Walrus. So we will be serving this at Walrus and the Carpenter. And right now it's very expensive and it's super weird.
Can you say how expensive?
I think it's like $190 a pound.
Wow.
I know, that's what we did too. Thankfully, they are paying us in fish right now so that we can kind of like, help them kind of get it into people's mouths. And I think it's worth it. I mean, in regards to like the cost that we incur with environmental problems that we are not seeing, that we continue to just like sandbag and pretend isn't an actual cost, and still charge $50 a pound for garbage Oro King salmon that if it just says salmon on the menu, that's what you're getting, and that's probably the best one. But like, we have to start paying for it, like in actual money, not in like environmental disasters. And I think, like all the things that, I think we all know is that like, I don't think we should be farming a trophy fish to feed the world, and it won't. And so like coming up with solutions that is in the future, like not right now, but in the future could be something where they do this for shrimp, or they do this for, tuna, or they do this for cod in a way that like it's producing something that is viable to actually create enough protein to help feed people, versus just this continual idea that like, isn't it beautiful, and then you go to, you're not allowed to go look at the farm because it's so gross. So that's my hope, is that like in my, when I'm unwilling to say anything nice about farmed fish, I want to say something else that feels like it could have some good in the world and make some change. So yeah, it's cool. And it's mind-blowing.
You heard it here.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And what about you? Is there something that you feel hopeful about after your amazing in-depth reports?
The continued resiliency of this industry and of the farming world too. And I think if there's one industry that's harder than restaurants, it's farms, and vice versa, basically. So to see that day after day, chefs and farmers are continuing to go at it, and continuing to really want to find solutions, to be part of the solution, that's something that makes me very hopeful. And I think I appreciate Renee's perspective on the cell-grown salmon, because some of the issues I have with this kind of product, or a lot of the plant-based alternatives, are who owns the capital and the displacement of capital from farmers to companies, basically, and multinational, a greater removal, a harder point of entry for first generations or second or third, these kind of things in our food system. So there's a drastic cultural shift in our food system that happens with that. And I wish that as part of that, it's definitely a solution for certain things, but also getting more people to eat more varieties of fish, period, and the bycatch and the type of fish that are usually not eaten. So instead of, in a way, continuing or in addition to continuing to get people interested in salmon, what about the other, I don't know, million or thousands of varieties of fish that they're not considering eating? And same thing with vegetables, etc. We're going to have to change what we eat because what grows where is completely impacted by climate. So there's definitely a lot that needs to happen in dialogue between chefs, farmers, and diners there. And so it's very creatively exciting, and so that keeps me very positive.
Keep it. Hold on to it. Is there any economic case to be made, or have you seen any economic benefits in the environmental initiatives that you're doing? Is there anything that's making economic sense for you when you cook or in your menus?
In terms of?
I'll say my example is I just got to write about a place in London called Apricity, and it is run by a New Zealand woman. Her chef, the chef is called Chantal Nicholson, and she was saying her menus. Like, I was really excited when I saw it. You see a lot of menus that feel like they're greenwashed, and this felt like really it came from a place she was thinking about. She makes her crackers from leftover bread ends that she hydrates and then rebakes. She has a no-waste dip that's made with like leftover radish, like the radish leaves that are left over, maybe a stray carrot. Her bouillabaisse is bycatch with things like extra bony John Dory that most people, whether you're a customer or a chef, don't want to deal with. But she was saying that through second life for her ingredients, and also like getting rid of as much extraneous things like plastic, like not using things and then throwing them out, whether it's like bottles, you know, and like serving filtered water in carafes that they can just wash. She estimates that she can cut between 10 and up to 20% of her costs, even though there's sometimes a little less extra labor associated with it. Her costs are down 20%, up to 20%.
Wow.
And that's, you know, that's a hopeful thing. I take that and hold that.
Shuggy's in San Francisco has the same philosophy, Shuggy's Pizza, but they don't just do pizza, and they're using second-grade vegetables, produce. So they using absolutely everything. They also incorporate a lot of that thinking in their cocktail programs, in their pastry, because sometimes a savory kitchen does certain things and everyone else gets a pass. So they really integrate everything throughout their operation. And last year when we did a roundtable in San Francisco, there was a coffee shop there. A coffee shop owner was a few locations, and she was saying that regulation makes it that she needs to discard the foam of any milk that has been used to foam cappuccinos, for example, has to be discarded as soon as it's been heated. So you can't refoam milk that you've heated for cappuccino. And so she has all of this wastage of milk. And the people from Shuggy's were like, oh, we can use that because we make our own mozzarella and our own ricotta, so we can take that from you. So there's a lot of these solutions like that end up benefiting a little bit everyone, but it's more about making those connections because it happens over a random conversation around the table. How do we formalize that a little bit more and make it easier for people to not just do things in their restaurant, but as part of even if it's a neighborhood system or something like that. So there's cost saving opportunities.
I would love someone to give me free milk. I think it's a double-edged sword. I think we chase that kind of reusing of everything all the time, or trying to find a way or save it. And I think sometimes, I don't know if anyone does this at home, but I'm like, I'm going to recook that, and then I like make something else to put in the thing to recook it or to and then it's just like I just wasted more. So there's a balance to trying to make sure that you're not just kind of chasing it with more money. To kind
and extra labor. I mean, there's no question like that is one of the high costs.
But
I
mean, I think my dream would be no plastic in a restaurant. That would be the biggest, I think.
That's someone, Edward Lee, I think, has his restaurant in. Yeah. That's exciting. Have you eaten there?
At the bar, a few things, yes. It is really exciting. And we have a number of chefs in our network who are trying to go no plastics. And there are still some obstacles that remain, including the health inspections, right? There are a lot of codes that make it really hard to not wrap things in plastic to put in the fridge or to put away. So we're looking at a pilot program to help some restaurants figure that out.
Call me.
Yeah.
Someone needs to create something that's not plastic, like that works as well as plastic wrap, right? Is that the goal?
That exists. Yeah. There's a compostable wrap. There's a couple of companies, but it's very, very expensive.
Super expensive. It's like those wax papers that I don't have it at home, so I use the wax things at home. It drives my husband crazy. But you get used to it. But I think it's it's just one of those double-edged sword where you're like, is it worth it? I hope so.
Yeah. Keep wrapping in wax paper then, right?
Yeah, and then I mean, plastic is unfortunately useful, and so then you have to figure out how you can put it in reusable plastic versus just single-use product. So
it's a mission. It's working. I mean, you just have to keep working on it, I think, right?
For sure.
Keep going, keep looking for your cell-based salmon, and hopefully the price will come down a little bit
see.
Because that was mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I did not think you were going to say that.
Neither did we. I think it's definitely not, I don't think it's headed to the market at that price, but that's currently the price.
Well, you guys have been awesome, and I'm going to put in a plug. We have a fantastic new newsletter at Bloomberg, and it talks about how restaurants are navigating a changing climate. Subscribers can check out Bloomberg's new Business of Food weekly newsletter, which comes out every Friday and brings you stories from across the newsroom on everything from farming and trade to climate solutions and consumer trends and things like Renee's cell salmon. I bet you'll be reading about that before you know it. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Bloomberg Green's Brian Kahn and Aaron Rutkoff.
Hi, I'm Aaron Rutkoff. I'm the executive editor of Bloomberg Green.
And I'm Brian Kahn, Bloomberg Green's climate tech editor. With U.S. climate funding cuts, there's an urgent need for innovative ways to reduce carbon, speed the energy transition, and adapt to a hotter world. These leaders are rising to the occasion, and their work demands recognition. Yasmin Ansari is a congresswoman from Arizona who's worked on the Paris Agreement and is calling out the fossil fuel industry's influence in Washington. Sam Balto's nonprofit Bike Bus World has launched hundreds of flotillas of cycling students, and now he's pushing city leaders and schools to support cycling en masse.
As director of Barbados' Bridgetown Initiative, Pep Barduli is working to reform the global finance system to enable vulnerable nations to tackle climate change and crushing debt. Nick Carter's battery company, Acacia Energy, is helping transition Australia from coal and keep the lights on during bushfires and heat waves. Andrew Collins is a climate-neutral engineer using hacks to cut down on beer brewery emissions, and cheers to that. As president of the Union of Concerned Scientists, Gretchen Goldman is working to stop the Trump administration's rollback of climate justice policies.
John Hennick is using AI to answer cutting-edge questions in sustainability and life sciences, while JP Morgan's Sarah Kapnick is a rare voice on Wall Street willing to speak up about climate change and translating science into the language of profit and loss. Kakani Katija created a gaming app where players' efforts are helping train AI-enabled robots to track and identify ocean organisms that are crucial to the carbon cycle. And Polina Lopez leads an environmental justice, advocacy, and cleanup organization fighting for the people who live near Seattle's Duwamish River.
Millions of people rely on John Mills's Watch Duty app to track the spread of increasingly fierce wildfires and follow evacuation orders. Chandi Rana is calling on richer nations to spend more to help the global south cut emissions and cope with the effects of warming. Congratulations to everyone, especially Gretchen Goldman, John Hennick, and Paulina Lopez, who are here, along with Bike Bus World Board member Noel Mickleberry, on behalf of Sam Balto. You can catch Yasmin and Gretchen on stage tomorrow at our event. And now we're pleased to welcome Seattle's own Paulina Lopez to the stage.
Good evening, or afternoon, I should say, to everyone. I am very pleased to be here, and I welcome you to Seattle if you are not from the area. As I'm going to start, I want you to remember a number and hopefully take it to your heart. 98108. Remember? 98108. That is the zip code of the neighborhood where I belong, and I've been living here for the many, many years. It's also the zip code where my kids have grown. I have 3 beautiful kids. And it's the zip code where you go and you see many beautiful, cultural, different colors, different food, and many, many different injustices as well. The Duwamish Valley, if you haven't been familiar, if you flew here, you pass by it. We live right next to the Seattle-only river, which one time was a beautiful connection where our Duwamish, the first people of Seattle, live in harmony with the river, not on top of the river, with the river at all times. The Duwamish tribe has been here from time immemorial, and they have been here stewarding the land. Unfortunately, the Duwamish tribe has not been federally recognized to receive all the benefits that needs to thrive. Some of the aspects of the neighborhood, 9A108 serves two communities, South Park and Georgetown. In the South Park side, we have been seeing the impacts of climate. In the Georgetown side as well. We just look different in the demographics. We have one of the most diverse communities in the Seattle neighborhood. Our youth is the largest number of youth of color in King County area, where more than 100 languages are spoken. And I'm bringing this up because it all relates. It all relates in the Duwamish Valley when we talk about cumulative impacts. We don't only are a resilient, a beautiful community, but we also see what we one time saw as a beautiful body of water, the Duwamish River, bringing all these benefits to us as a habitat, salmon being the main fish that we have that feeds the orcas that you see in this beautiful Puget Sound. But after industrialization, of course, it went from a beautiful, wavy, meandering river to make it a straight river. Why? To serve all these economic purposes. Even though we have more than 2,000 industries around it, we haven't seen the benefits back into our community to represent what it needs for a community to thrive. We don't only have that in the industries that are bringing all these emissions and all these injustices sometimes because we love work, we love jobs, we love this economic vitality that Seattle has, but we don't like the injustices that it has this brought in time immemorial since ever the industrialization came. With that, we saw impacts on air pollution, giving us the highest asthma hospitalization rates in the whole King County area. And 10 is the number of life expectancy difference between my neighborhood, which is 15 minutes down, and a neighborhood that is 15 minutes from here. 10 years of life expectancy difference. It's a big difference when you are in the middle of two airports, when you don't have enough tree canopy, and when you also are breathing PM 2.5 and lead and cadmium and arsenic coming from all these different sources of pollution. How do we know about cumulative impacts? And I want you to remember this. We have done all the community science, including our youth. They have helped us realize all these different scientific information because there is community expertise. And that's what is very important when we talk about climate. And in this political climate, it is important that we remember giving the voice for those who are impacted. We know what the truth is. We know what we breathe. We know when we walk around what the impacts are. But we also wonder inside the house, what is happening? Am I doing the right thing? Advocating is one thing. Living, growing your kids is the other one. But you also think, why? And then I want you to think of Sophia. Why does Sophia have asthma in the Duwamish Valley? Oh, because this is the only neighborhood Sophia could afford. Really? Why was this the only neighborhood she could afford? Oh, because there wasn't any other affordable neighborhoods they could live. How come there was no other neighborhoods that Sophia's parents could afford? Oh, because this is a polluted area, so things were cheaper. There's no need to put higher prices into it. So always we go to the root causes. And that's what our organization has been trying to do, the Duwamish River Community Coalition, in collaboration with many, many partners. How do we turn the curve and we just go from the just transition and thinking all these root causes of, land is number one. How come people of color, redlining is an issue, people of color have been put into neighborhoods that are smelling, that are impacted in the everyday because that was, for our kids, for our families, it's okay to be there. So climate change has impacted different way for us. As I did talk a little bit of the injustices and impact, but we also live next to a river and this beautiful body of water that we all connect that actually brought me 20 years ago to live in this neighborhood was also getting mad. As we all know, climate is real. And what we were thinking it would happen in 20 years already happened 2 years ago. And we have homes full of poop. I'm not kidding. Sewer backup. Sea level rise was happening in my neighborhood. One day, and guess who was there to help us? Nobody. Our organization was the only one calling for the governments until they realized who is going to help who. There was no plans because we were thinking this would happen 15 years. We have time. No, there's no time. We already seen the impacts. We already seen the cumulative impacts of living in a flood zone, cumulative impacts of breathing all this air. We have seen cumulative impacts of being in the middle of 2 airports. So how are we going to do all this into a meaningful change? And we change the air quality, the rising temperatures, having a river is beautiful. Our youth always says, look, Miss Paulina, we can have a river here that is like a piece of chocolate that we can't eat. Because you're hot. Today is hot. Do you know how many times I would like our kids to be swimming in that river? But they can't because it has over 42 chemicals contaminated. But yes, the responsible parties, which are more than 200 responsible parties, including Port of Seattle, Boeing, and City of Seattle, are getting to something. It has just taken, when I started, which was 10 years ago, we used to say, in 20 years, we will have this river clean. Well, I've been advocating for this for 20 years, and I still say the same. Why does it change so much to actually uplift all the time and all the voices that we need in order to center the real change? So I refer a little bit to the cumulative impacts, which is very important when we're talking to communities and how root causes are need to. We're not just exposed to one thing, to the river pollution, which is a Superfund site, one of the most toxic in the nation, but we're talking about air. So how do we create policies? And that is what is so important in a time what everything that we're saying in our mission statement is trying to be erased. Environmental justice, DEI, diversity, equity. Yeah, language is important. And they're trying in this administration to erase what we are advocating for. And it's important that we recognize. But most important is to have this certainty to support communities like ours. Like I'm sure in your own neighborhood and your own communities, you can support and uplift for policy change, for investment. That's what we need. Invest in the youth. Give them those jobs. Invest in more education towards green economy, towards green jobs. That's what we are trying to do because we know this is the only thing. Who would save us? Ourselves. But we need the support, and we need the collective in order to do that. We need to break all these silos that we've been working like, oh, let's do environment, but not environmental justice. No. People at the center, that's what is going to bring the change, people at the center. So we can continue supporting what the United States is, reaching diversity and reaching knowledge and wisdom, and bringing those to the center that have been left behind for a long, long time. And then all we're going to be thriving, because once we are going to be thriving, we can make miracles and bring polluted areas into beautiful parks and be all together in the collective to protect us ourselves from environmental racism and have a good health equity for our communities that we belong. Thank you so much, everyone.
Welcome to the stage, Anna Jane Joyner, founder and CEO of Good Energy, and Stephen Markley, author and television writer, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Lindsay Firestone.
We'll give it one. Hi, guys. Hi, I'm Lindsay Firestone, and I'm the Film and Special Content Projects Lead at Bloomberg Philanthropies, and I'm delighted to share the stage with Anna Jane Joyner, CEO of Good Energy, and Stephen Markley, author of The Deluge and writer on the hit TV show Paradise. How many of you in the room have had a chance to see Paradise? Maybe by a clap of... Okay. All right. Well, we're going to jump into that a little bit more soon. I personally just finished binging the show. I'm in an interesting state. Maybe we'll talk to some of you after this program. But it's a gripping socio-political thriller for those of you who are uninitiated. And it's really exploring tipping points for our planet, tipping points for our society, and tipping points for us as individuals. And I was curious if maybe both of you could share kind of what was your tipping point for getting into the climate crisis, and where does storytelling fit into the climate crisis?
Please.
My tipping point was probably the beginning was a documentary I saw in college on mountaintop removal coal mining. I grew up in the Blue Ridge Mountains in the Gulf Coast of Alabama, and the idea of my mountains being blown up was just viscerally unpalatable for me. And I basically have done nothing ever since then. But the way that I got into storytelling, humans have been telling stories for over 50,000 years. It's literally what kept us alive and keeps us alive. We are meaning-making machines, and having worked in the climate movement my whole career, I just kind of could feel that we were missing these riveting stories that help us respond to this emotionally, that grip us, that help us provide meaning and purpose. And I had the opportunity. My dad is an evangelical megachurch pastor, which is another set of stories, religion. And I was in a show called Madam Secretary on CBS. It's a TV procedural. They had a storyline that was inspired by me and my dad, where I tried to the character tried to convince her evangelical father climate change was real. And through that experience was like, can you tell me, to Alex Maggio, who's the writer on that episode, why we're not seeing more of this on screen, what we can do to change it, and will you introduce me to all of your screenwriter friends so I can get them on the phone? And shortly thereafter, I found Lindsay, and Bloomberg Philanthropies came on as our first partner. So huge thank you.
Well, we're thrilled to be a supporter. Thank you.
I was always sort of a politically motivated young person, and in college, my attention just kept coming back to what I thought was clearly like the biggest problem humanity has ever faced. I also wanted to be a writer, and I think sort of melding those interests, like writers are often just working on what preoccupies them. And so I really started thinking about this novel, The Deluge, around like 2007, 2008. Started it in 2010, and it took me 12 years to complete it. And now it's all coming true. So it was
prophecy.
Yeah, it was a time well spent. And then Dan Fogelman, he had hired me for Only Murders in the Building as my first TV job. He read it, brought me onto Paradise. He was kind of like, Mark Lee, we need a disaster. I was like, I've got a bunch.
And to that point, we talk a lot about, in the climate crisis, about facts and figures when we're communicating on the topic. But why storytelling?
You go first this time.
Yeah, unfortunately, encounters with reality don't seem to be working or pushing the needle very far. And I think everything Anna said about the power of storytelling. We need those narratives that sort of make clear, and this is something I spent many years thinking about with my novel. It's not enough to sort of show people what's going to happen. They have to feel emotionally what the stakes of this moment in history really are. And so getting people to feel those stakes through character work, through the encounter with human beings that feel real, I feel like is a more powerful way of focusing one's attention on the problem at hand.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. We work with a story scientist named Dr. Angus Fletcher. He's one of our advisors, and he studies how different story structures evoke different emotions. He calls them literary technologies, but talks a lot about TV and film within that. And he says that there's a mythology that storytelling is the best form of communications, but it's actually the only form of communications. Because if you don't convey information through a story, people either block it out completely, which is why facts and oftentimes PowerPoint presentations and other forms of communications do get blocked out, or they attach it to a story that they already have. And that is why we can, in this country, look at the same facts, come up with very different conclusions, and also it's why I do think that conveying stories are so imperative, not just to climate, but any social change or social movement, because it goes, again, back to our evolution. Like, the way that we survived was through telling stories, and the better the story, the more memorable the story, the more likely that, community was to pass it on and survive. And so I do think it's in our DNA. So yeah, it's critical. And TV and film is the most powerful storytelling engine in the world today. Over 700 million people are subscribed to Netflix alone, and most in this country, the average amount of hours that people spend watching TV and film is over 3 hours a day. So it just reaches a great deal of people in the most persuasive means possible.
Talking about reaching a great deal of people, Stephen, on Paradise, I think you guys reached 7 million viewers in just the first week alone. Tell us a little bit about that show and the audience reaction to it and the process of working in the Hollywood system to make that a reality.
Yeah, you're making me feel very great about my work
you
here.
Should.
So it was weird because the idea was really out there when we started. Then the strikes happened, so we all left our jobs for 6 or 3 months, right? And then came back, and we were all kind of oh my God, what is this? And you have no idea how people are going to react to anything. You have no clue how people are going to accept or not accept the narrative you've built. And so the fact that it came out and was a hit was not surprising, but more just oh, really? Okay, cool. And so from that perspective, it's kind of you're just grateful to be on a show that's working and that's successful and that's getting renewed. We're all just trying to sort of hustle our careers forward, as everyone else is. But then, I look at it as, I did my little piece of it. I got this slice of climate change into the show in a way that, it's big, but also, in my opinion, sort of points to what these tipping points mean. I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it, but it's not just oh, this disaster happens. It's, oh, this disaster causes the next disaster and the disaster after that, as the dominoes begin to fall and the system begins to unwind. And I think that's why particularly episode 7 is just a banger. It's just so intense and cool and fun and scary, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful piece of television.
That's a great cue. I think we want to run a poll about what we are hoping to see in climate change and climate storytelling. So if you use the QR code above, what type of fictional portrayal of climate change is most effective in driving public action? So this is an audience poll for all of you. What about urgent and alarming depictions, hopeful and solutions-oriented, or character-driven narratives with subtle climate themes? So we'll give everyone a chance to answer that question, but I know you two have a bunch on this topic.
Talk all night about this one.
Angie, why don't we start with you? And as whoever can put the poll answers up as they come up, that'd be great.
I would say, there's definitely certain climate themes and topics we need a lot more of. Mental health and climate, I think, is a really big one because that's kind of a crisis within a crisis. The rates, especially amongst young people, are astronomical. And one of the big, most powerful things that stories do is help us process difficult emotions and help us feel less alone and feel seen. And they call that in psychology a psychological safety net. And you have to have that before you can move into a place of any kind of agency or action. I would say climate displacement, which is definitely a part of Paradise, and climate migration, and then beyond petrochemicals and plastics, and just given how the villain, for lack of a better word, why all this is happening in the fossil fuel industry. But also, I think even more important than that question is how we need stories that evoke different emotions. If you think about your favorite film or a film that really changed your life or television show, you probably don't remember the exact story beats or the name of every single character. What you remember is how it made you feel. And so I think that we really have to look at what are the stories that help us process grief, that help us find a sense of courage, even with overwhelming odds, that help us really remember how beautiful and a gift this planet is and the opportunity to be here together that sense of love, which I also think Paradise does really well. So yeah, that's.
So The Deluge particularly is definitely an urgent and alarming depiction. So for the 15% of you willing to buy it, I appreciate that. I think it's unavoidable, though, that what this thing is urgent and alarming. Like, there is no way around it, right? I wrote a chapter in that book about Los Angeles burning down in 2018. The book came out in 2023, and then this January, I got to watch from my balcony as the literal part of the city I said was going to catch fire caught fire in the exact way that I'd sort of written it into the novel, right? So this is not any type of clairvoyance on my part. I am just following what the science is telling us is going to happen, right? So to me, alerting people to the fact that, for instance, the insurance industry is in a ton of trouble is important. Like, if we're not explaining that to people through narrative, what are we doing? Having said all that, I also think there are definitely not enough stories about the energy transition and the revolution that's happening in clean energy. What I find when I talk to people is they're aware really bad shit's happening. What they're not aware of is that we have all the technology we need to solve 60 to 80% of the problem right now. We know every policy we need to implement. We just can't because of the political economy of it, because of the power of the fossil fuel lobby. So to me, like, making that part of the story come to life, the comeback story. Like, we are down by, I was just watching NBA Summer League, we're down like 35 points in the fourth quarter. And we need to start like really jacking threes to get back in the game. This analogy is going to get out of control if I don't stop. So.
Could I add something on to that?
Of course.
I think it also, that's kind of like, it connects back to why stories are so important, because we do have all the science and the technology and policy. What we don't have is a sense of collective courage. And what gives humans courage is the stories, whether or not that's the story of your family, the religion that you grew up or you subscribe to, or television and film is a really big one, because that is the most pervasive form of storytelling. So it all circles back.
Stephen, you mentioned the fossil fuel industry. They've long played a role in culture-shaping narratives. What have you, both of you, really taken from their playbook?
Have unlimited money. Simple. No, I mean, look, that industry has had an enormous head start in shaping the public consciousness, over a century, right? Again, as the power of the fossil fuel industry wanes, which eventually it will, because solar and batteries and all the rest are going to come after it and begin eating into it. Hopefully, the power of these other industries will help us tell some of these other stories, right? But again, it's an uphill climb. Look, I just went to see F1 in IMAX, which was awesome, but also is about like fossil fuel powered cars, and Aramco is all over that movie. Right? Like, it's a major sponsor. So you get the ways in which this industry has sort of like subtly shaped our minds over everybody's lifetime here. And so that is what I guess both of us are trying to do, is find ways to chip away at that storytelling power.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, unfortunately, they have been extraordinarily brilliant at storytelling and investing in culture change. I mean, they were investing in Hollywood from the inception of Hollywood. They funded a Oscar-nominated film in the 1940s, might have been, 1940s or 50s. They still spend an enormous amount in Hollywood, and it is specifically to shape everything from car companies who not only place their products in TV and film, they consult on the stories and how they're depicted. Landman, some of y'all might have seen, glorifies the fossil fuel industry. Also, there's some folks connected to that who invest in anti-renewable policy. So, they've been spending so much money in the stories to create the sense of identity of fossil fuels being about freedom, about masculinity, about living the good life. And that was incredibly intentional from the very beginning, continues to be. I mean, Saudi Arabia just opened one of the biggest film funds in the world, 70% of which is funded by fossil fuels. I think it's just the oil and gas industry spends $750 million a year on climate communications, way more than the climate movement spends. And they also, like, one of the screenwriters we work closely with is Dorothy Fortenberry, who wrote on Handmaid's Tale and was on Extrapolations with Scott Burns. And last year at the panel, she was on the panel here last year, and she had this great quote that was, it's not that we haven't been telling climate stories, or it's not that there hasn't been climate stories in TV and film, it's that the wrong side is the one telling them and has been telling them. So yeah, brilliant playbook.
That's a great Dorothy quote.
Yeah.
Anna Jane, maybe we can sort of zoom out. Tell us a little bit about how good energy works in Hollywood.
Yeah, so we kind of have like three sort of strategic areas. One, we do a lot of narrative research. So we work with academic partners. USC is our primary partner. We looked at all of the scripts that aired in the U.S. market between 2016 and 2020 when we first got it started, to see over 37,000 scripts, to see which ones even mentioned climate change, let alone told stories about it. Just the mentions. And this isn't just the word climate change, it's like every variation of dialogue that you could use to talk about this. That was 2.8%. The actual stories were a lot lower, and we're redoing this study partially thanks to the Walton Family Foundation, and of course Bloomberg, our friend from the Walton Family Foundation, is here, so thank you. We're doing that now to see how it's gone up, but we're also doing the first ever narrative analysis of TV and film, so not just looking at the frequency, but the stories themselves, and what kinds of emotions are they evoking. Are they predominantly apocalypse stories, which I think we can safely say is true. The other tropes we see a lot of are eco-terrorism and shaming and guilting people over their plastic straws, over their SUVs, which is not the best emotion that you want to evoke because it shuts people down. And then where we need to go. And we also look at stories around particular issues. We're doing a big one on health and climate right now. We're doing one on climate migration. And then the other areas that we work, so we do a lot of research. Then we develop tools and services and programs for them, and we also co-create them with screenwriters and creative executives. And I built my team from people who have a great understanding of climate and that landscape, but also have a really in-depth understanding of this art form and this form of storytelling and the business needs of the industry, because at the end of the day, this is a business. So then we build things. We have a playbook for screenwriting in the age of climate change. We have all kinds of kind of public open source tools, but it's also how we build the whole organization. So how we do our consulting on TV and film projects, how we talk about this with creatives in the industry and business people in the industry. I would say a lot of our success is based on our research and then applying that to the actual work that we do.
Can I just interject quickly, just to say that, like, isn't it crazy that, like, you have to form this organization to point out that nobody's talking about reality?
Yes. Yeah.
That, like, it's 2.8% of film and TV is talking about the biggest thing to happen in the history of humankind.
Yeah.
Like, it is wild, and it just, like, shows the power of what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and I do think a lot of that is the way that we talk about it. I mean, screenwriters, as you well know, are inspired by the world around them. And if they're hearing most climate information being kind of dry, boring facts, or really confusing, then it's less likely to inspire a story. So translating climate to creatives is a big part too.
And to jump in on that, Anna Jane, because I know we're running low on time, but we've made some progress.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks in large part to shows like Paradise.
Yes.
But if we look 5 years out, what would you both hope to see? What would you hope to see in pop culture, and how would you hope that would shape the larger conversation?
Well, obviously, The Deluge as a 15-part, Netflix series. Obvious.
They do care about climate.
Yeah. And then I think like a variety. Like I would love to see a show that is excited about our energy future, that is excited about all of these solutions that people do not know enough about right now.
Yeah, I would like to see a lot more diversity of climate narratives and a lot more genre diversity as well. We're starting to see that. When we first started, it was a lot of superhero films, the rare occasions that showed up, and then a lot of kind of like, Day After Tomorrow type of films. But now we're seeing the latter half of our research. It's really diversified genre-wise. So I would love to see some more rom-coms, but I also think it really goes back to that emotional experience. So it's not just the topics that we're talking about, but it's like really being intentional about the kinds of stories that we're supporting and making, and how they make people feel, and how do we give people a sense of courage and help them wrestle with this really overwhelming human experience that we are. Part of the big problem is we're just not talking about it enough. Part of the problem is we're not telling stories that evoke that enough.
Couldn't agree more.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you both so much for being
you.
here.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all for joining us.
Please welcome to the stage Jane Fonda, Academy Award-winning actor and activist, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Jason Kelly and Meg Szabo.
Thanks, everyone. What a way to end the day. Jane Fonda. This is amazing. So we have so much to talk to you about, Jane. Meg and I are so excited. I know the audience is excited. And I want to start by asking you, because I guarantee you there are people in this room who are climate activists who think about the environment because of you. Fair? No. That wasn't as enthusiastic as I was hoping for, but we'll get you there.
And I'm sure I think of climate because of some of the people in the
Right.
room.
Probably true. So to that end, what ignited you? What made you think about this back in the day?
I think the fact that I was born in 1937 and spent the first 10 years of my life in California was important. There were only 2 billion people on Earth then. Is this working?
Yeah.
2 billion people. And guess what? 2 billion people is the carrying capacity of Earth when it comes to us guys. Sustainability means there can be 2 billion of us. Well, as has already been mentioned, there are more than 8 billion now, and demographers say that there'll be 10 billion by the middle of the century. You know, what are we going to eat? Well, we'll eat cell-grown fish, I guess. But, no, really, we're destroying our soil. You all know that is better than I do. But what that meant for me was, you know, most people in the 30s, they lived in the country. They didn't live in cities. Right. And that meant there was a lot of nature. You know, I lived on the top of a mountain overlooking, kind of like this, overlooking the Pacific Ocean, only not so close, farther away. And there was no smog, there were no freeways, there was no plastic. And we did just fine. We did. It was maybe more difficult, but it was just fine. But, you know, I woke up and went to sleep to the sound of coyotes. I heard mourning doves and nightingales and meadowlarks and bobcats and mountain lions. And I grew up with animals, and I was always outside, like a lot of you probably. You know, it was the solace for me. It was not so great inside the house. Yeah, there's something wrong. Oh, well. Anyway, I came back. I moved away. I came back 40 years later, lived near the beach, and people were getting cancer. Lifeguards were getting cancer. This ocean that I swam in every summer, I didn't want to go in. People's eyes were burning. My kids got asthma. It's like this was not the same. And then I was married to a man named Tom Hayden, who was a movement leader at the time, and we focused a lot on petrochemicals. There was the hole in the ozone. There was the cancer. There was Dow Chemical was one of the main villains at the time. Anyway, so I've always cared about the environment. I've always cared about the creatures, the wildlife. And then we discovered through the work against petrochemicals that corporations were running the government.
Yeah.
Actually, my husband interviewed Jimmy Carter when he was in the White House, and Carter said to him, one of the things that I've realized now is the corporations are running this country. That was the president that said that. So I've always cared. I've always, loved nature and the environment and didn't like what corporations were doing to it, but I didn't really follow the science. I didn't really know until like 2018, 19, the degree to which the climate was being challenged, primarily by the burning of fossil fuels. And that wasn't being talked about then. Most of the big green organizations, with the exception of Greenpeace and Oil Change International and a few others, they talked about the alternatives, the things that we were working for, but they never said what was the primary cause of the climate crisis. And you can't solve the climate crisis unless you talk about what's causing it primarily. And it wasn't until I started reading Naomi Klein's couple of books that she wrote that made me realize this is existential. This is different than anything that we have ever faced before. And I got very, very depressed. I know what that feels like because I knew I wasn't doing enough. And I called Annie Leonard, who was running Greenpeace at the time. She's here. She's the bravest, smartest, most strategic person I know. And I said, I want to move to D.C. and create a ruckus. I want to camp in front of the White House, and I'm going to really, cook up some good trouble. I was worried about where to poop.
You said, I've done this before, and I'm going to do it again.
Yeah. Pooping was a problem. I didn't know, how do you do, what do you, I know what to do in a blizzard or in the country or in a forest, but what do you do with your poop when you're camping and protesting in a city?
Think about that, ladies and gentlemen.
But she said you don't have to worry about pooping because it's not allowed anymore. You're not allowed to camp out. And so, long story short.
Oh, camping, not pooping. Okay.
We created Fire Drill Fridays, which meant every Friday we would focus on a particular topic involving the climate crisis, and then we would engage in nonviolent civil disobedience. I mean, this is what changes history. If you look at the history of nonviolent civil disobedience, it's what's really changed things a lot. And so we did that, and it changed us a lot. Our goal was not to pressure the government. Trump was in office. We knew that about 65 to 70% of Americans were concerned about climate. We wanted to move from concern to action. And I turned 82 in jail that fall, and I knew that was very important because a lot of people said, well, if she can do it. People came from all over the country, mostly gray-haired women like me. And they'd never been at rallies before. They'd never been arrested before. And it really mattered. It made a big difference. There were a lot of new activists came out of that. And when COVID hit, we took it online. And for a year, we had 9 million people that would join us across all platforms. When COVID ended, and Annie and a very small team, the board that we have, it's a small group of people. Coven. No, it's not a coven. So we've all for decades marched and protested and lobbied and written books, and we have not gotten the legislation that we needed that was commensurate with what science was saying that we needed. Why? Because so many people that we elect to office take money from the fossil fuel industry, and they won't move. And so we said, okay, if you can't change the people, change the people. We're going to kick them out and get climate champions elected, and we decided to focus down ballot because that's where you have a lot of influence. that's where a lot of the struggles for climate justice and fossil fuel infrastructure and all of this is where it happens. I mean, you can't imagine how down ballot state and local officials have such power when it comes to the fossil fuel industry, to saving properties, to stopping fossil fuel infrastructure. Plus, it's less expensive. We were just new, and we couldn't make a dent in the presidential election. It's not strategic. What we did, I think that what we're doing is the most strategic thing. All over the country, governors, mayors, city council, state legislatures, county executives, school boards, public utilities, these things make such a difference. So we've had, I don't know, something like 170 candidates that have won. We have a 2-to-1 winning ratio. We win 2-to-1. We have 44,000 donors around the country. We have thousands and thousands of volunteers that we can get to come out to local campaigns. And
can you tell us a little bit more about what are the key issues you're focused on right now with the PAC?
Climate.
Climate.
We focus on climate. We study the candidates a lot. We work with local people on the ground because they know the best about who are the good potential candidates. Can they really win? We're not a protest PAC. We're in it to win it. Can they win? Can Jane PAC make an appreciable difference if we endorse? Is this in a heavily industrial area where people are sick and dying and have absolutely no help from city councils or supervisors or governors? You know, that wonderful presentation by the woman, what's the name of the river?
Paulina Lopez.
Yeah, that place. As you all know, there's places like that all over the country. And we go there and try to help them get an electoral advocate for them, you know, get people elected that are going to help them. These are the kind of things.
And so Jane, how often are you finding the candidates, and how often are they finding you? How is that evolving?
Well, when we started, none of us had ever done anything like this before. Mm-hmm. We built the plane as we were flying it, and we didn't know whether I'm popular now, but I'm not I've been not so popular. And I didn't know whether, they would come. They're coming.
Yeah.
They're coming. Because when I show up, instead of getting 7 people to volunteer canvass, they got 50. Right. Or they raised triple the amount of money. And the morale is boosted. And it's really strategic. What we're doing, we're building a firewall against what Trump is attempting, because this is the place where people are going to be able to say, no, we're not going to do that. Or fight back on developing public land, anything.
And when you say this is the place, you're talking about at the local level and with the utilities and things like that. Is there a surprising place that you found? Is there an example of one where you thought, oh, this is how this is going to work?
Well, they teach us what's going to work. I mean, we've had we flipped the Virginia legislature. Right. We had 14 candidates running for this is in 2023, for the Virginia legislature, and 13 of them won, and it flipped Democratic.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that we try to do is you all know what a now I've forgotten the word. Trifecta. Is that what it is? When you get governor, state senate, and state house, you got a trifecta. We're going for the trifectas. And there's a lot more there's many more, I have the numbers down here someplace, many more Democratic trifectas since Trump's first. There's all kinds of reasons on the ground in state and local levels why we're in a much better shape than we were the first time he was elected. We've got more good people in office, we have more trifectas, we have more Democratic governors, and so on. I mean, I'm not depressed.
You seem good.
I am. And it's because, Greta Thunberg says, everybody goes looking for hope. No, look for action. and hope will come. And I know personally in my heart and soul that that's true. The more you do, the less depressed you're going to be, because there's a lot of reasons to be hopeful.
Jane, have you seen a moment like this before in your over 6 decades of activism, and how did you get through it?
I have never seen, no, we've never in human history has a situation like this existed where the Trump stuff, is this working?
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
Oh, yes.
We got you.
I mean, it's just, y'all are facing this way, but we're facing this way, and we're looking at that. I mean, I'm from Los Angeles. This is like, wow. This is why we have to fight. This, yeah. What was the question?
Historically, I mean, you've been through some bad moments where the country has gone in a way that you didn't agree with.
No, this has never happened.
Yeah.
I mean, we have 2 crises, 2 essential crises, and for both it's now or never, democracy and climate, and they are absolutely interlinked, and we have to solve them together. We're losing the democratic infrastructure and norms to deal with the climate, and we're losing the climate stability that is essential for a democracy. We have to solve them together. And we've never faced, especially in America, we've never faced a threat like this to our democracy at a time when, it's a perfect storm, at a time when we're being told by climate scientists, some of you may be in this room, that we have to cut our emissions, fossil fuel emissions, in half in 5 years now. You know, when I started to realize what was happening, it was 12 years, and we haven't done it, and now it's 5 years. By 2030, we're supposed to cut our emissions in half, and then gradually, not suddenly turn off the spigot, but gradually phase out to zero by mid-century. And we can do it because the alternatives are, it's not just that they're there, but they're ready and they're being used all over the world. I urge you all to read Bill McKibben's new article in The New Yorker. It's about the sun. It's about how robustly solar energy has taken over the world. And no Trump and his minions are going to be able to turn it around because it's safe, it's cheap, it's forever, and it's job intensive. There's way more jobs in that sector than in the fossil fuel sector. So, I mean, what's not to love? We just have to love it to life, not love it to death. Love it to life. Oh, that's a good slogan.
You saw it happen right here, folks. This is great.
Jane, I feel like, you know, everybody in this room, I'm speaking for myself, but I would also think everybody in this room that's been working in climate for years is probably feeling a little bit depressed right now, and just the shift that has happened. What advice can you give to us all to keep us all going and make us continue to fight the fight? And what can we do in times like this that is the most effective?
I think that the most important things to do very specifically is elect climate champions up and down the ballot all over the country, starting yesterday. You know, we've already got about 28 special races this year, and it's an off year, right? You know, we can't just deal with elections, you know, like after Labor Day on the year of the election, when the election is November. We have to, this is a year-round thing. Find out who's good. Let us know. Let the other organizations know that are working in this sector. Run yourselves. I mean, God, imagine if all of you were elected to office. Whoop! It'd be a tsunami coming at the fucking fossil fuel people. By the way, this is totally a non sequitur, I mean, whatever, but Toyota. I bought my first Prius from Toyota. I thought Toyota was a good guy. Toyota is the biggest funder of anti-climate work. They fund disinformation and they stop any progress that can happen. Did you know that? Most people don't know that, so I'm telling you.
So, Jane, you know, it was interesting we were listening to the session when we were backstage with the Paradise folks about climate storytelling. you're a storyteller. You have been a storyteller for a long time. You're obviously an Academy Award-winning actor, filmmaker. How does being a creator, as the kids say, how does that influence your activism, and how does your activism influence the choices you make in terms of roles that you take or projects you decide to pursue?
Well, I've always wanted to support and fight for working women, so I made 9 to 5. I don't like solar energy. Nuclear energy. I don't care what they tell you about these new small modular reactors. I've done some research. It's not the solution to the climate crisis, okay? Okay. No, it's not. Time is of the essence, and these things, the fastest take 10 years. Most of them take 20 years. And guess who ends up paying for it? Us. Speaking of, you asked me what to do. Okay, vote for climate champions. And the other thing is make people aware that in that horrible bill that just passed is, I think, around $20 billion of our tax money goes to the fossil fuel industry in the form of subsidies and tax rebates and things like that. Most people don't know what's in the bill. And when they know that their Medicaid is being taken away and their food stamps are being taken away and the prices are going up because of the fossil fuel industry, and at the same time that that's all being taken away from them, we're giving $20 billion to the people that are killing us. People have to know this. We have to raise the heat under them by letting people know what it is that he's done. And he's getting away with it. The other thing, speaking of we have to keep him from getting away with it. We have to protest all the time, constantly, all kinds of protests, including civil disobedience. You know, I don't know about you, but every time I see a documentary about the civil rights movement, for example, or anti-apartheid, where people are really being, their batons and the dogs and the hoses, and I ask myself, would I be brave enough? Could I have stood up to that? And I've realized I don't have to ask anymore. This is it. This is our documentary moment. And so I'm sure you have people, young people, whose lives, you'll die and they'll go on and what it's going to be like. So you want to do everything you can so they'll know that you tried, that you fought for them and for their future. This is our documentary moment. So we have to, and we have to talk about what's in the bill. We have to let people know. We have to make them mad. We have to call their attention to the fact that we're being made to pay for the things that are making us sick. I think that those are the things that we have to do. And if we do them, we won't be depressed.
Well, that is
at least that's my and I know a lot of other people too. Hope is a muscle, it's like the heart. It's different than optimism. And optimism says everything's going to be fine. And they don't do anything to make it so. Hope is the opposite. Hope is you're doing it and you're working hard and you're giving it your all, and you don't get depressed.
What keeps you the most hopeful?
My activist and my team. See, I've been through hell in terms of people hating me and being attacked by the government and everything. I know what it feels like. It's going to get worse than that, though. Nixon, he's like kindergarten compared to Nixon, the first Earth Day was so huge that Nixon created the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and the EPA. That was Nixon, a Republican, who did that. So things are worse. What was it that you asked me?
What keeps you hopeful?
What I do and the fact that I'm not alone. I'm part of a movement. I have a board of people here, and then people believe in what I'm doing. That keeps me. Michael Bloomberg, I guess it's appropriate to talk about him for a second.
No, we can't.
I've known some billionaires up close and personal. And they're different. You know, some people are billionaires and give away a lot of money because they want to go to heaven. And they wanted to be considered a good guy. And then there's Michael Bloomberg, and it blows my mind. Here is this white male billionaire in New York who understands that in the climate space, what's strategic is listening to black women on the ground in Louisiana. It's unbelievable what his petrochemical philanthropies has done in the area which is the hot spot of the climate crisis, the Gulf of Mexico, along Texas and Louisiana, where our shrimp and clams and oysters and fish come from. Don't eat them if they come from there. I mean, I've seen it up close and personal. They're killing people. They're wiping out entire communities. Like every house has somebody in it that has cancer. And Michael Bloomberg is doing something about it. He is really, it just blows my mind. And another group that I think is represented here is Patagonia and Holdfast and their CEO, and they've been very generous to the PAC too. So that gives me hope. And being with, you know, with a great board, my PAC has a small board of experts, and then just listening to the people that have talked here. There's so many people that are involved in this, and I just don't think that we're going to let it. I don't think we're going to let it go.
I have no doubt you're not letting it go. I think.
Well, that doesn't matter.
Well, I think it matters a great deal, and I know that I speak on behalf of the audience. We can pick those up on the way out. We really appreciate your time, Jane. Thank you so much for coming up.
But everybody, rise up, protest, make yourself heard, make people understand what's in that bill. You know, let's just not sit around talking about it. Let's really do it. Okay? I don't know how many, raise your hand if you come from this area. Okay. I wish I could take all of your names, because we're coming back. We have to do something really brave here. This is worth saving. And I learned from my friend Jay Inslee, you've already lost that tremendously important kelp forest that was here. That's gone. I mean, there's so many things going. So if I come back and we put out the word, I hope all of those people who raise their hands will join us in doing something fun trouble, good trouble. Okay? Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Shane Fonda. Great job. All right, I'll do that.
Thank you so much, Jane. Wow, thank you. I hope everyone enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. It was a great way to end us. I would like to quickly just thank our title sponsor, Amazon, and our official airline, Alaska and Hawaiian Airlines. And thank you to all of our speakers, and to Jane, and to everybody that was here tonight. And thank you all for kicking off our Bloomberg Green Seattle event. We'll be back here starting at 10 a.m. tomorrow with a long list of amazing speakers, so we hope you'll join us back here then. We'll see you then.